Hello everyone, I'm Jamie Kinslow, and today we'll review key updates from TEA related to accessibility and designated supports for the 2025-2026 school year. The goal is to make sure every student, whether they're served through special education, emergent bilingual, 504, or RTI MTSS, receives the supports they need to be successful on STAR and TELPAS. By the end of today's training, we'll review new and updated TEA guidance, revisit accessibility best practices, reflect on our local procedures, and plan how we can ensure all students have practiced their needed supports before the spring assessments. Remember, this training supplements but does not replace reading the official manuals and policy documents on the TEA website. After the training, please be sure to complete the form at the end to receive credit for attending. Let's start with the latest from TEA. The look of the strike-through tool has been updated for the 2026 school year as reflected in the slide. Braille materials will now be kept at the campus and not returned to Cambium after testing. Students will be allowed to use these materials the following year for practice. The most significant update is that mnemonics are no longer allowed to be test-taking strategies. This means we are not allowed to use mnemonics like race or ape. The guidance remains that letters or phrases used in the support should represent content terminology like PEMDAS. Your content specialist can make the distinction of what constitutes content-specific or general testing strategy language. Another reminder from TEA is that supplemental aids should not be used for all students. Only those who are struggling academically and have practiced using the support during instruction. If a student uses a supplemental aid for the first time on a test day, that is a red flag. It must be a part of their regular instruction. Any acronyms, mnemonics, or must be on a separate page away from images or diagrams. If you are not sure about an aid, please reach out for approval before using it. You can always email me directly with any questions. Other reminders from TEA. STAR and TELPAS tests have a 7-hour time limit, but students must complete the test by the end of the school day regardless if they have received 7 hours. Students should typically finish within about 3 hours, but can test up to 7 if needed. Only students with approved extra day accommodations may continue beyond 1 day. Make sure your testing plans reflect these limits. All emergent bilingual students, even those whose parents decline services, can still receive accommodations and are eligible for reclassification. That means they can use content and language supports and text-to-speech on STAR reading and still exit the program if eligible. Text-to-speech includes an embedded line reader that moves with the highlighted text. This year, students can turn this off in the settings section within the test. Please have your students practice using text-to-speech in Cambium so there are no surprises on test day. Students that receive content and language supports on the RLA test will have shortened pre-reads. This change occurred in the spring of 2025 and will continue this school year. TEA explicitly requires blank scratch paper for all math assessments, including Algebra 1. Hayes CISD has encouraged this for years, and it's now statewide policy. In fact, Hayes CISD suggests blank scratch paper for all assessments. Please note that grid paper counts as allowable scratch paper. When talking about accommodations, please remember that they must always be based on individual student need and never by label or program. Avoid statements like only dyslexic students can get this accommodation or Tier 3 students automatically qualify. Each student must meet eligibility criteria on the criteria documents. RTI and MTS teams must review eligibility collaboratively, not individually, and all supports must be documented in SuccessEd. A team means more than one person, and documentation is required for any designated support given through RTI. As a reminder, test administrators cannot read directly from the computer screen to students. If a student needs something read to them, they must qualify for text-to-speech. If a student receives text-to-speech and needs a dictionary definition read to them, they can look it up in a paper dictionary and the proctor can read that definition aloud. Remember, this only pertains to students who receive the oral accommodation. Text-to-speech will be turned on for all third grade students for the math assessment so that they can receive reading assistance if needed. Test administrators may not read from the screen. Students and staff often get confused on the oral admin rules for the RLA test because the rules change depending on the section. Notice in the chart that passages are never read to students for the reading portion of the RLA test, but they are read in the revising section. For the editing section, neither the passages nor the questions and answers are ever read. There are many writing supports available for students through the local designated supports. Some have overlapping Cambium online tools available in these supports. Spelling assistance supports like spell check and word prediction are for SPED and 504 students only. Speech to text also can be a support available for spelling assistance, as well as tools outside of Cambium like a frequently misspelled word list. Basic transcribing includes SPED, 504, and RTI students. Examples of this include speech to text as well, or students writing their constructed response on a piece of paper and a trained test administrator transcribing the writing into Cambium for the student. Complex transcribing requires TEA approval. This is when a student dictates the essay to the test administrator. This is an extremely involved process and is rarely used. Please make sure that these tools are practiced in the classroom instruction and not just before STAR. The document attached is available to help teachers know how to provide these accommodations in the classroom daily, in Eduphoria, and in Cambium so that our students will be successful on the STAR day. As I just said, students must know how to use their supports long before the test day. We provided student practice slides and a Cambium scavenger hunt you can access through the bit.ly. Now we're going to move on to an accessibility overview. There are 3 types of accommodations: accessibility features, locally approved designated supports, and designated supports requiring TA approval. Let's briefly review accessibility features. These are tools available to any student without documentation. These do not need to be entered in TIDE or noted in paperwork. Examples of this are reading the test aloud, as a student can do this for themselves. These students may need to be in a separate room, as this could be distracting to other students. Reading assistance for STAR Grade 3 Math. Blank scratch paper. Please note that the medium, the blank scratch paper, cannot be manipulated to use a specific strategy. That means you cannot give a student folded paper or paper with a graphic organizer. Embedded sticky notes tool, embedded notepad tool, amplification devices like speakers, color settings, line reader, zoom feature, highlighters and color pencils, a large mouse pointer, or a projection device to enlarge the test content, Students can use tools to minimize distraction or maintain a focus. There's a permissive mode and a use of technology for medical reasons, like a student having their cell phone out because it monitors their levels if they're diabetic. We also have some language supports like signing and translating test administration directions. And on the STAR test, bilingual dictionaries are allowed for all STAR tests. Students can also have individual or small group administration. And test administrators can remind students to stay on task. All of these supports are available to students if they use them regularly and effectively in the classroom and do not need to be documented in SuccessEd. Now we're moving on to the locally designated supports. Designated supports, unlike accessibility features, must meet specific eligibility criteria and must be documented. Each support has a policy document, and policy documents are broken into sections as seen on this slide. Each policy document has a section for assessments that can use the accommodation, the description, students who are eligible, the committee with the authority to approve the support, examples of the support, and special instructions or consideration. This chart shows which committee can approve certain supports. Each support is linked to the policy document for convenience. Before we go through the 11 supports, I want to go through one together to show how to look at eligibility. The support we're going to review is content and language supports. The eligibility requirements say students may use this designated support only if a student routinely, independently, and effectively uses this designated support during classroom instruction and classroom testing, and instructional and assessment decisions are made by the 504 committee, ARG committee, or LPAC. As a reminder, all students in our buildings should be routinely, independently, and effectively using some form of content and language supports in classroom instruction and testing, because that's what good teachers do. Examples of that include pre-teaching vocabulary, using anchor charts, rephrasing questions and other vocabulary, visuals, and formula charts. Because of this, 100% of our SPED, EB, and 504 students technically qualify for content and language supports because they should be routinely, independently, and effectively using these supports, and they are in the proper committees that can approve them. However, not all students may need these supports. If they do need the supports, we need to make sure the paperwork is correct. Now we're going to go through each one very quickly to talk about the different types of supports. Please note that each one has a policy document that you should review before assigning a support through a committee. Basic transcribing, we've already talked about, was an examples of which are speech to text, or students writing a constructed response on paper and a test administrator transcribing it into Cambium. Braille and refreshable Braille are available. These students automatically qualify for an extra day. Calculation aids provide an alternative method of computation like a basic 4-function calculator. Please make sure you review these policy documents carefully as different grade levels have different rules of eligibility. We've already reviewed content and language supports. There are examples of content and language supports in the STAR accommodation guide. Individual structure reminders allow a test administrator to provide reminders that are beyond what's required or allowed for a student during a standard administration. This might be giving students timers to remind them to move on to the next question. It might be sticky notes or something that you do regularly in class that works particularly for that one student. Large print provides a student with an enlarged test material on paper. It is 18 font, or at least 18 font size. Most students use projected devices instead of the paper large print because we can project it as large as we need to onto a screen. Manipulating test materials allows an administrator to physically manipulate a test or online tools. In this situation, a student is communicating with a test administrator and telling them what to answer or what to click on a test. Because of this, students will need to complete their tests in a separate setting in order to eliminate distractions. Math manipulative supports are concrete objects like tiles that students can use to visualize abstract concepts. And there is a list in the policy document that's not an exhaustive list, but it will give ideas of what's allowed. Oral and signed administration, usually text-to-speech. We've talked a lot about that one already. There are guidelines if a student is taking paper, is very specific. Just a reminder that in order for a student to get anything read to them, they must be eligible for it because test administrators cannot read from the screen. Students who are deaf and hard of hearing, we do have options for proctors to have a secondary monitor or a proctor code in order to supplement the signed supports that are available. Spelling assistance, we've talked about this one already, like spell check or word prediction. We could also use basic transcribing, and this is only for our SPED and 504 students. This is an example of what it looks like for spell check. Students do have to click the spell check button for this to come up. It won't automatically underline a word like Eduphoria does. And then this is what word prediction looks like. Supplemental aids, we've talked about this one already too. Reminder that we cannot use mnemonics that are test taking strategies. And this is available for ARD, 504, and RTI students. There is a guide at the end of the policy document that shows what's allowed and what's not allowed from TEA. The final type of supports are supports requiring TEA approval. They are complex transcribing, extra day, math scribe, and other. If you believe a student needs one of these, contact your ARD facilitator or testing coordinator. I will help them submit the TEA request forms. If you have any more questions, please reach out to your campus testing coordinator or one of the district level contacts that are listed on this slide. Thank you so much for your attention and for ensuring that every Hayes CISD student has equitable access to testing supports. Together we can make sure every student is prepared to show what they know. Don't forget to complete the Google form linked at the end of the slide for credit. Have a good day.